Alrighty guys, welcome to this presentation today. We are talking about dryland conditioning sessions for swimmers. Now, this is something that we are really passionate about at Formidable, is how can we get the most out of our swimmers no matter if they can be in the water or not. And this is very prevalent in regional and locations that don't have a pool full time. So sometimes the year you don't have a pool. This is something that can be really helpful and really useful. And what we're going to go through here is, what it is, how it looks, what we're actually doing, does it freaking work or not, and then a bunch of sets and how to plan out weeks and all those things. Also, you'll notice you'll have a handbook that you can download at this point. This has much more detail in it. It's full detail. It's got example sessions. It's got what equipment you can use, the pros, the cons, sets for each bit of equipment that you can use and just drag and drop into your own programming if you would like. And then also some weekly templates that you could use as well. So we've done a lot of the work for you, and now we're just going to explain to you exactly how it works. So feel free to download that now. Pause this video, click the download button so you have that up so you can be going through this at the same time, make notes wherever you like. So getting into it. So this is all about how do we train energy systems outside of the pool. And it's really important to remember your energy systems do not care if you're in the water or not. They don't understand. There is no mechanism in your body that goes, I'm in the water now, my energy systems have to be different. Okay? Your body responds, your energy systems will respond exactly the same whether you're in the gym, you're on track, you're on an assault bike, or you're swimming. Okay? They do not care. There is not something in your body that internally goes, oh, you're in the water now, you need to do something different. That's not how it works. Okay, your fitness levels, your energy system levels are all dependent on your heart rate, oxygen, and other factors like that. Okay, so this just brings us to this question of why dryland. I'm just trying to get my head out of the way. Why dryland? Okay, you can use it to maintain cardio and metabolic fitness when you're out of the water. You can train all your energy systems in any environment when you're doing it in dryland. And dryland develops general athleticism and mental toughness as well. So there's also that element of it. If you're taking swimmers out of their comfortable environment, what is the water, and making them do things in uncomfortable situations or in uncomfortable environments, such as, on an assault bike, running up and down hills, whatever that may be, or on, ropes, etc., in gym conditioning sessions, it can be very, very, very uncomfortable for them, and that will help them get better in those situations. Okay, not talking about flogging people for the sake of flogging people. I'm very much not into that, but taking people out of their normal comfort zones and putting them in different zones is always going to build a sense of resilience and mental toughness. Okay, and it just leads back to this. The goal here is to build confidence. Dryland isn't necessarily a downgrade. Okay, it's a chance to strengthen your swimmers' engines even when the pool is off limits. Again, we're talking mainly to guys who don't have access to the pool and may need a little bit of help with that. So what's next? So what are energy systems? Okay, so we have our aerobic energy system. What is our long duration exercise, very oxygen based efforts. Okay, so this would be classified as your A1 to A3. Now in your handbook you'll have a big thing about what explains all of this in a lot more detail. The second energy system that we have is your anaerobic energy system. Okay, so it's your short, high intense efforts, and these are explained in the booklet as AN1 to AN3. Okay, there's AN2 in there as well. Okay, and the way that we measure these is based off heart rate. So your beats below max and the zones that puts you in is how we measure this. Okay, so beats below max is just the amount your heart is beating below your maximal heart rate. Okay, you can calculate your maximal heart rate by your age take. I think it's 220. Not a mental blank there, but it's in the booklet, and that will give you what your heart rate is. Okay, so if you're looking to get, say you've got a maximal heart rate of 200, okay, and you need to be 40 beats below max, it'll be a 160 max heart rate. Okay, by using your beats below max, it keeps it very simple, and it's very easy to measure it. Even if you don't have heart rate monitors, you can always just do the old finger trick and use the clock and build out from there. okay? And it makes it very simple. You don't have to have fancy equipment. You don't have to do anything else. Everyone's got a pulse. Everyone's got 2 fingers, hopefully. And if they don't, you've got heart rate monitors and other things that you can use. And again, your heart rate does not care if you're on a bike, you're swimming, you're running. It just responds to intensity. Now, you may come at me and say, well, my heart rate jacks up when I run versus when I swim. It's like, duh, that's because you are trained to be a runner and you are an efficient versus a very efficient already swimmer. That's why. Your movement patterns are better, your motor control is better, so therefore you are more efficient, okay, at the movements required to make you go there. That is why. And that's why when we get to the end of this, I'm going to stress the importance of this is not the solution. This does not mean you don't have to be in the water and expect to get results in the water, okay? It's going to help build your energy systems and all these other amazing factors, but it's not a replacement. This is a substitute, not a replacement. And it's something that you can sub in if you want to do more other things, and that's a different presentation on how you can do this in conjunction with your normal swimming training. But if you don't have access to the water and you need to get some conditioning work in, this is what we're talking about today. Okay, so we're going to go through your aerobic zoning right now. So these build your aerobic base, okay? The better your base is, the better your swimmer's endurance and their recovery between reps or between sessions. This is very important. This is why even sprinters need to have a good aerobic base because it will allow them to recover from session to session faster. Okay, so in A1, A1 is really a recovery and a technique zone. Okay, it's 60 plus beats below maximal effort. What's huge? An example of this would be like an easy jog or spinning your legs over, and it's about a 3 out of 10 effort. Okay, if we're going to go out of a 1 to 10 effort score. A2 is your endurance zone, your endurance focus, and this is about 40 to 60 beats per minute. Okay, it's a steady 30 to 45 minute run or jog or something like that, or bike sessions, and you're roughly around 5 out of 10 for this. Okay, so it's still very low intensity levels. Then we have A3. Now this is the one that most people in the pool are going to have really bad times with your threshold and your short rest sets. Okay, / your VO2 max work. Now this is 15 to 40 beats below max. Okay, and this is an example of, you did 4 or 5 minute threshold interval bike sets or something like that, and it's an 8 out of 10. So it's very intense. It's a lot of effort involved. Okay, it sucks. This is the one that sucks. Okay, and these are all different ways that you need to build these up, and you need to use a different ratio of all 3 of these depending on what the athlete needs, what type of season you're in, and where do you want to get that athlete to get better at. Now, going into your AN1 or your anaerobic zones, okay? So we have AN1, AN2, and AN3, okay? So AN1 is push through the burn, okay? This is your lactate tolerance work. Heart rates are either at max or 10 beats below, okay, when the efforts are happening. And it's an example of this might be 6 times 30 all out, and then 30 seconds rest, okay? So you would go 30 on, 30 off. And it's like a 10 out of 10. You should get off these and be pretty much cooked. You need a long time to recover afterwards, and you're pretty much done. Okay. AN2 is your lactate production. Okay, so this is how you can produce more lactate and sustain peak effort with full recovery between efforts. So this is very much like, okay, we need to get as much lactate into our body as possible, but then we also need to recover from that, as we need to work on recovering and making sure we have full rest. Okay, so this would be like 4 times 30 max efforts, okay, and then you would do a 4 minute rest in between. So you get a fair whack of rest. It's like a 4 to 1 ratio of rest there, okay, or it's much bigger than that realistically, okay, and that's a 10 out of 10 effort when you are doing the efforts, okay, and it's very challenging work. And then your AN3 is your alactic power, okay? So this is your sprinting, like how do I get fast at twitch? How do I do these fast twitch energy zone work? Again, its heart rate zone is a 0 to 10, so it's very much right up there. This is pure speed, okay? And you do really want to stop before it starts hurting, okay? This would be like 8 times 10 maximal sprints with 2 minutes of rest in between. So you're not really getting outside of that no oxygen required zone with this, and you're really working yourself at a super high intensity and try and go as fast as you can, Okay, then you're getting heaps of rest. Again, it's a 10 out of 10 effort. We're talking effort here, not like, heart rate sweating. Effort can be done in a lot of different ways, but we're talking about you putting as much into that work rate in that moment. Okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some equipment options for you guys you might want to look at here. Okay, so obviously there's an assault bike. I personally really do like the assault bike for swimmers because it's, the pros of it is it's a full body. You've got your arms and your legs working in conjunction, so it's got a lot of crossover to swimming. Your arms are still getting a lot of work done here. Okay, you can actually swap between arm and legs if you wanted to. So if you wanted to just have your arms going and getting that pump up top and having that more upper body cardio experience, you can do that and then swap to your legs for your recoveries and stuff like that. You've got a lot of options with an assault bike, and it's very scalable with the intensity. You can really jack the numbers up. It's very controlled in what you want to do, and it's very good at measuring what you're doing as well. The cons of that is obviously it's quite expensive, and if you don't have one, you can't really replicate it too well. Okay. Another one that's really, really nice, but a little bit more jarring on the body for people who haven't got it. It's a bit more higher injury. It's a rowing ergo, so a rowing machine. Again, it's full body and it's very measurable, the outcomes. This is the main thing. Like if you don't have good rowing technique, you can obviously, create injuries like any other way of doing stuff, where the assault bike is very safe and it is quite bulky. Okay. Sleds. I love sleds. I think they are excellent tools and can be used very well, but you can get your upper body and lower body use out of it if you've got a rope that you can pull. Okay, so they're very useful tools and they're very easy to increase and change what you're doing and really work all energy zones. Okay, they're great for power work. You can really get some really good, strong 10-second burst work out of it, and they're very versatile. Like I've just talk to you about, I'll wax lyrical a little bit about them. I love them. That might be just a bit of an S&C person coming out at me, but I think they're very useful, very versatile, and you can get them very compact as well, and they're not terribly expensive. The issue you will run into is having the right surface for it and the right space, and then having weight as well and having to pay for the weight to add to it when you need to increase those intensity. Another one that's quite good, but swimmers are notoriously terrible on their legs, is hill sprints. So if you've got a hill, you've got a pretty good way of doing some high intensity work and getting some really good efforts out of it, and you can really scale these. So there's no equipment required. If you've got a hill, you've got a hill. It's pretty good, but it does require you to have a hill. If you don't have any hills, it's pretty tough, and if you don't have a hill that's long enough, you can really do struggle to get the distance work in on that. Okay, med balls, these are very good. You can use these in a lot of different ways. They're very good for upper body power and being explosive. You can do them in longer repetitions as well, but you do have to be a bit careful about that in terms of safety. And they are realistically going to be more limited to shorter bursts. You can do long duration work, but you're not going to be bouncing a med ball off the floor and picking it up for freaking minutes. It just won't work, and you'll bust people up. Battle ropes, love a battle rope. Again, it's upper body, so there's a little bit better crossover there in terms of we're working the muscles that we would work in the water a little bit more specifically. It's upper body conditioning, so it's great. You can have different sizes of ropes. They obviously do cost a fair bit of money. For what they are just big freaking ropes, and they do break quite quickly. And they do require anchor points and spacing, okay? Now, you can be quite sneaky with the anchor points. You can just wrap them around a tree or a post or something, and that will work. Or you might need to just drill a little anchor into the floor. Okay, skipping ropes, they're great, they're cheap, good cardio equipment, been used, tried and tested since the start of time. You can have that good range. You can go for minutes on them as long as you progress it up and have good ankle stability, and you can just do that really explosive work on it as well. But they do require you to actually know how to skip and being quite coordinated at skipping, and that can be a skill that can be developed over a fairly long time, especially when you've got a really huge bunch of really uncoordinated on-land swimmers. And then you obviously got running that you can use as well, and this is anyone can run, or anyone has the ability to run, but it is highly impactful, and I don't technically recommend it for swimmers because their ankles, knees and hips are so loose, and they don't have a lot of reactive strength through those things unless you've done some very solid conditioning work on it. So moving on to some example sets, here's the assault bike with a little nifty video. So if you want to do some A2 work, you could do some 30 to 40 minute steady spins at your 60 to 70 RPE. So that'd be B at your beats below max. Then you've got your A free work if you want to do some 5x4 minute hard at threshold, and then take a minute easy. And then you can really do some all-out AN1 work with your 6 times 30 on, 30 off, so 1-to-1 ratio stuff. Here's some opportunities for some hill sprints. You can do 10 times 60 uphill walk/jogs, and then walk back down, keeping that heart rate nice and low. You could do some really powerful sprint work, like some 20-meter sprints up and then some walking down for 30 seconds. And you can do some really high intensity power outputs where you just max out up the hill for 10 seconds and then you take your 2 to 3 minute rest afterwards. Then we go into our rowing. Rowing, you could just do that easy 20 minutes and that steady state work. You've got the 4 to 6 minute threshold pace that you could also be ticking along on with that 90 seconds rest. And then you've got your 4x30 max power with some 3 to 4. So you've got a lot of options here on that. Some med ball work, you can really do some AN free work with some 5 times explodes with 60s, or you can do this combined and get some other equipment in, like some jumping, some squats, or just some dumbbells or anything else, and just really implement that into your programming as well. Now guys, these aren't all the things in the booklet you've got from the download. You will have sets for each energy zone, for each bit of equipment that you can then plug and play as you would like to at your own preferences. Now, here's some considerations that we really need to think about before we're building out a weekly plan. So you do need to plan these out. You do need to understand what you're trying to achieve, like any other. And if you want to check out a bit more about macro programming, you can check out my video that I did before on macro programming. But realistically, you do need to make sure you know how many sessions per week is realistic for your swimmers that you're going to be working with, what equipment and the environmental concerns are going to come across. If it's freaking boiling hot, that's going to have a huge effect on your heart rate. And if we're just measuring off, if we're going off heart rate, that is what we need to worry about. So you may need to change and tailor your sessions to make sure that you're hitting the right zones. What phase of swimming season are you in? Is it off-season, return to pool, or are you race prepping? They all require different types of training, and we can go into a little bit of that later with the distance versus sprint. And then what age groups are you training, and who are you working with? Age demographic and training age is really important. You need to make sure that you do make those huge considerations and build out programs according to that. And are you building capacity, or are you targeting performance? So this is like the aerobic, or you're working for speed. So, and before assigning workouts, assess the context. Context is always key, and you really need to make sure that you're looking into that and building those out effectively. Planning for a remote age grouper is different than planning for someone who's trying to do roto. It's also different than someone who's a very trained athlete, very trained swimmer with a lot of experience doing this kind of work, okay? So you need to tailor the volume and the intensities to make sure it's practical and suitable for the athlete that you're working with. Okay, so here's some differences between, if you're one of those considerations, obviously, you got your more sprint dominant and your distance dominant programs, okay? So the sprinters week is going to look a little bit different to a endurance diff or a distance swimmer or a middle distance swimmers, okay? So you're going to have fewer sessions with higher output for the sprinters and more rest between. Distance swimmers often thrive on a bit more volume. They're going to need a little bit more volume in that, A1, A2, A3 work, where the sprinters are going to be more hitting that AN3, AN2 work. For strength work, this is something that you might want to supplement in as well, but when you're thinking about your supplementing in of that, you're going to think of stuff like, for sprinters, you're going to do your heavy trap bars and jumps, while the distance guys are going to be working more on that postural stability strength work, so they can make sure they're holding stroke over time a little bit better. Obviously we always want to think athlete first and then an event specific. So here's a little table on that. So here's the factors, focusing on energy zones. So sprinters, you've got the AN2, AN3. The distance guys, you're looking more at the AN2, A2, A3, and supplementing that stuff in. Session length, shorter, more rest for the sprinters, obviously, and then longer with, bigger intervals for the seconds. Strength, what are you going to think about if you're supplementing your strength in, max strength and power output versus, your more endurance and stability elements. Conditioning wise, are we being more explosive? Are we CNS focused versus are we more aerobic focused and repeat efforts? And then the frequency, higher intensity requires more rest days, more consistency and volume across the week for the distance guys. Now, here's a little example of what that may look like if you were going to do 6 to 7 sessions. You might jump in on a Monday with some endurance work, 40 minutes of a steady state run. Tuesday, you might jump into some, more AN free work, so you want to get some speed with the assault bike. Wednesday might be your recovery day, so you're just doing some A1 work after that big Tuesday session. Thursday, threshold, because you've come off a recovery, so it's a really good time to really hit that threshold up and really get some work done. Friday might be an S&C day with a A1 flush. What's quite nice, you get your good S&C session in with a flush afterwards. Okay, Saturday, going for power, and then Sunday you might have a recovery where we're not really worried about the energy zones. We're just focusing on getting it done. Here would be an example of 5 sessions a week. Monday we might go your endurance. Tuesday we're going for speed. Wednesday we're going for rest. Thursday we've got a threshold. Then we've got the strength and core work, and then we've got a bit of recovery on the weekend. And if you're going to just do a 3 day a weeker, like with some juniors or something like that, and you're just trying to keep them involved and entertained and doing some really nice stuff, Monday you may have more of a threshold focus. Wednesday you may do some more S&C and some AN2 work, so you're combining the strength work with a bit of maximal efforts. And then you can have an endurance day on the Friday where it's all more about that steady state work, getting them worked out. So here's some tips for you guys. Use beats below max or RPE if you don't have heart rate monitors. Heart rate monitors would be the preference because that is objective. It's not, and there's less human error involved in that. But if you don't have that and the heart rate's going to be too high for you guys to take, you've got RPE scales. So just, what was the effort required to do that? And then you've got your beats per max in terms of take your heart rate and see how you go. Cue effort level clearly. So, you can do things like a talk test where, you have a conversation, you can hear, if someone's really puffing and huffing, they're obviously in quite an intense energy zone rather than someone, they're doing their A1 work and they can have a really easy conversation with you. It's really useful to make sure that people are being honest in their training and you're getting the right result from the effort that you're putting in and what you're wanting out of your program. Watch out for your overuse, especially with the running side of things. You will break swimmers if you just keep running them. And try and keep it fun, try and change it up. Circuits, games, and build some team spirit out of this is like put their heads in dark places and seeing how they come out. So it can be very useful for just that team spirit side of things. I mean, you don't need a lab to do this. You can just get out there and get started. Use your eyes, use your ears. Let the athletes tell you with their breathing, their body language, and their mood about how they are handling the work. So some key takeaways before we shut this down. You can change any system anywhere, okay? But the transfer does happen later on in the pool. Again, this does not work if you don't end up swimming. You're not going to get better at swimming if you don't end up with some swimming. So you need to make sure that this is we can do some really solid work here. So when we get to our swimming stuff, we can get in the water and we can work more and more specific technical work, and we have that huge energy zone base, and we're ready to, gins are ready to rumble. We now just need to get us on the track and practicing how to apply those energy zones into the water and getting that all synced up. Use your beats below max zones to guide your intensity. Dryland is, it can be a secret weapon here. If you don't have access to a pool and you're thinking for 6 months of the year, I'm going to get my swimmers back and they're going to be useless, this could be something that you can really easily do. Even 3 times a week can be a very useful asset for you guys. And then this is a substitute, not a replacement. We've harped along about this the entire time. Time in water is essential. So no pool, no problem. Stay consistent, smart, and focused. Train the engine now, swim faster later. And just remember, energy systems can be developed out of the water, but they must be transferred into the water. The longer the athlete is out of the pool, the more important the reintroduction of swimming-specific technique and stroke mechanics when they return to the water is. Think about this as a bridge to get you across the time that you can't be in the water, but it's not actually going to get you to the destination. Again, Dryland will build the engine, but the water is where you learn to drive it. Now guys, that's all from me today. If you do want to learn more or follow more, you can follow us on socials. We have my personal account with Swimming Strong. You have Formidable Strength and Coaching. What is our other Instagram account? What is the company one? And if you would like to join some of our programs, please feel free to reach out. We have swim programs and we have gym programs for people to come see us and to do remotely. They range from a junior program that is available from anyone who can't access a gym. It's all to people who have full access to a gym. And then if you're not a part of our school community, please reach out to us. We would love to get involved with you and your club to make sure that we can get you on board and help you develop more systems like this for your programs moving into the future. For any of these details, please just email me at ryan@formidablestrength.com.au, and I look forward to hearing from you guys soon.